Okay, hey there everyone, welcome to the stream. Today we'll be looking at reproduction in animals part 2. Now, this is quite funny because I haven't made part 1 yet. Part 1 will come after this, okay? I can't really find the file, so that's why, but don't worry, it will come. So without any further ado, let's get started. So over here, we'll be looking at human sex hormones. So we have human secondary sexual characteristics. Primary sexual characteristics are present during development in the uterus and other differences in reproductive organs, um, such as for the male development of penis, for female development of vagina, uterus, and all that. That's primary sexual characteristic. But secondary sexual characteristics are the changes that occur during puberty as children become adolescents. They are controllable. They are controlled by the release of something called hormones, estrogen in girls and testosterone in boys. So release of hormones, estrogen, and testosterone. Okay. So female secondary sexual characteristics include development of breast, body hair grows, also called pubic hair, menstrual cycle begins, which we'll look at, and hips get wider. For men, the secondary sexual characteristics are growth of penis and testes, growth of facial and body hair, also called pubic hair. Muscles develop, voice breaks, testes starts to produce sperms. Now, as these are the differences, we also have some similarities that happen to both boys and girls, including the growth of sexual organs and the growth of body hair. Emotional changes also occur due to the increased levels of hormones in the body. So if you have mood swings or there's more interest in sex, is because of these hormones. So now we'll be looking at menstrual cycle. This is a very important concept because most of the questions are also from here. So yeah, so eggs develop in small structures called follicles in the ovaries. So these are the ovaries, okay? So the eggs develop in small structures inside them called follicles. After a girl reaches puberty, one egg is usually released from the follicle into the oviduct. This is the oviduct every month. Before the egg cell is released, the lining of the uterus, so the lining of the uterus, which is this, becomes thick and spongy so that it's ready to receive a zygote. Okay, so it's full of tiny blood vessels which will supply the embryo with nutrients and oxygen if it should arrive. They are talking about the uterus lining over here. Okay, however, if the egg cell is not fertilized, the spongy lining is not needed. It gradually breaks down and is slowly lost through the vagina. So this is the vagina. This is called menstruation or periods. It usually lasts for about 5 days. After menstruation, the lining of the uterus builds up again so that it will be ready to receive the next egg if it is fertilized. That's why, so this will probably be like the next month. That's why we said that follicles are released every 1 month usually. So this is it. So let's start from here. Okay, so inside the ovary, a follicle containing an egg cell develops. The uterus lining is repaired. Ovulation occurs. Ovulation is the release of an egg. The follicle bursts, releasing an egg cell from the ovary. Fertilization could take place. Fertilization takes place in the oviduct. The follicle turns into a corpus luteum. The lining of the uterus becomes more vascular. It becomes more thick and spongy, ready to receive an embryo. Now, menstruation occurs if the egg has not been fertilized, the thick uterus lining is not needed, so it breaks down and is gradually lost through the vagina. So as you can see, it's breaking down and is being lost through the vagina. So yes, so now corpus luteum. So you can see the release of egg over here, formation of a follicle, and yeah. So now it's very important to look at the role of hormones in controlling the menstrual cycle. The recurring events of the menstrual cycle are controlled by four main hormones that you really need to focus on. It's the estrogen, progesterone, FSH, which is follicle stimulating hormone, and LH, which is this word. Oh, no, when we look at it, then I'll pronounce it properly because I don't really know how to pronounce it properly. Sorry. Estrogen and progesterone are secreted by the ovaries. Very important. You need to know where each of them are secreted. FSH and LH are secreted by a small gland attached to the base of the brain called the pituitary gland. During the first part of the cycle, following menstruation, after this has been done, both FSH and LH are produced. FSH causes a follicle to develop inside the ovary with a developing female gamete egg inside of the follicle. The developing follicle secretes estrogen in increasing amounts. Now the follicle is inside what? It's inside the ovary, and then this is secreting the estrogen. That's why we said that estrogen is secreted from the ovaries. So since follicles are now secreting the estrogen, what the estrogen does is that it causes the lining of the uterus to become thicker and better supplied with blood. When the follicle is fully developed, there is a surge in the production of LH. This causes ovulation. So now when there's a surge of LH, that is what causes ovulation. When ovulation has taken place, the estrogen levels start to fall. Okay, so once ovulation takes place, estrogen levels start to fall. The follicles from which the egg was released develops into a structure called the corpus luteum. So the follicle from which the egg was released now becomes a corpus luteum. So there's no egg in it anymore. This secretes progesterone. Now the corpus luteum is still in the ovary. That's why we say progesterone is also released by the ovary. So the concentration of progesterone increases. Progesterone keeps the lining of the uterus thick and spongy, ready to receive a fertilized egg. This increase in progesterone inhibits the pituitary gland, which causes FSH and LH production to decrease. So now notice that when progesterone increases, FSH and LH start to decrease because now we are expecting a zygote to enter to go inside the uterus. So at that time, if FSH and LH are still being produced, then this will form another egg and ovary and then probably release it into the oviduct. Then ovulation will happen because of LH, which we do not want because we already have a zygote coming to land on the uterus. So to stop that, once the progesterone is high, the levels of FSH and LH are low. If the egg is not fertilized, let me just clear this so that's a bit more clear. The corpus luteum breaks down. So the secretion of progesterone drops and then menstruation occurs. So menstruation occurs when the egg is not fertilized, the uterus lining breaks down. Because progesterone is now inhibiting their secretion, the levels of FSH and LH start to increase and the whole cycle runs through again. So now once the egg is not fertilized, menstruation is occurring, the levels of progesterone will now decrease, and once they decrease, FSH and LH will start to increase. However, if the egg is indeed fertilized, then progesterone levels stay high, so that this happens because the corpus luteum remains in the ovary and continues to secrete progesterone. Progesterone helps to maintain the thick uterus lining so that the embryo can implant into it. Once the placenta has developed, this takes very important, very, very important. Look here. Once the placenta has been developed, this takes over the role of secreting progesterone, which it does throughout pregnancy until the baby is born. So before pregnancy, what is secreting progesterone? The corpus luteum or the ovaries. But as soon as the placenta develops and throughout pregnancy, what will be secreting progesterone will be the placenta. The high levels of progesterone during pregnancy inhibit the secretion of FSH by the pituitary gland, so no more follicles develop in the ovary, of course. Now this is how it is. So now during this part, during the first 7 days approximately, you see the uterus lining break. Is it written here? Yeah, uterus lining break. Then it slowly begins to build up again. Around day 28, again repeats, it starts to break. Then again it goes, repeats, again repeats, okay, until the egg is not fertilized. So now these are the rules of FSH and LH. So you need to know how their levels during these process. So FSH, it stimulates egg maturation in the follicles of the ovary. stimulates follicles in the ovary to secrete estrogen. So now this is FSH. Okay, so FSH. Then we have LH. At its peak stimulates ovulation. So when they ask you where does ovulation happen, or which day does ovulation happen, because LH is at the highest point, that would be day 14, because ovulation happens because of the surge or increase in LH. LH then results in the formation of a corpus luteum. Once the ovulation is done, it then returns back to its normal levels. FSH is, so follicle has been stimulated, then slows down just like LH. Let me just charge my laptop a bit. Before that, let me check if the stream is still going on, because the previous stream got stopped for some reason that I don't know. Is it working? Yep, it's still probably live, I guess. Yeah, it is. Okay, that's great. So, so that was LH and FSH. Now we move on to estrogen and progesterone. So estrogen stimulates the uterus to develop a lining to replace the lining lost during menstruation. So you see, once this is lost, then the estrogen starts to increase so that it can stimulate the uterus to develop another lining. Progesterone and maintains the thickness lining of the uterus. So now, until day 14, before ovulation, progesterone levels are low. But after day 14, progesterone levels starts to rise because why? It has to maintain the thickness of the uterus lining. It stops FSH and LH. So after this thing, after day 14, where progesterone starts to rise, you can see that there's a decrease in FSH and LH. Inhibits, yeah, so if fertilization doesn't occur, then levels drop down of progesterone. However, if fertilization does occur, then progesterone levels will stay like this. Okay. Then we need to look at STDs, which stand for sexually transmitted infections. The infection caused by bacteria or virus that can be passed on from one person to another during sexual contact. By far, the most important of these infections is HIV/AIDS. So the disease AIDS, or which stands for acquired immune deficiency syndrome, is caused by HIV, and HIV stands for human immunodeficiency virus. So this is the virus. You need to know the parts. Okay, so the middle part is the genetic material, RNA. These are protein codes. Okay. Okay, so don't worry, just a few more slides. Stay with me, and we'll be done soon. So HIV infects the white blood cells, and in particularly as a type of white blood cell called the T cell. T cell is the strongest, normally our strongest defense against viruses. Over a long period of time, HIV destroys these T cells. Several years after infection with the virus, the number of certain kinds of T cells are so low that they are unable to fight other pathogens effectively. Because HIV attacks the very cells that would normally kill viruses, it's difficult for someone's own immune system to protect them against HIV. About 10 years after initial infection with HIV, an untreated person is likely to develop symptoms of AIDS. So after HIV, you then get AIDS. They become so vulnerable to other infections such as pneumonia and other, some even develop cancer because one function of the immune system is to destroy body cells that are beginning to form cancer. Brain cells are often quite damaged by HIV. A person with AIDS usually dies from a collection of several illnesses instead of one. However, now we can we can control HIV through drugs called antiretrovirals. Just be regularly taking your antiretroviral, and yeah. So the virus that causes AIDS cannot live outside the human body. It's it's in fact a very fragile virus, much less tough than the cold virus. So in general, there's no danger there's no danger of anyone that is infected with HIV from normal contact with someone with AIDS. You can talk to them, shake hands with them, drink from the same cups, and on and on. A person can only become infected with HIV through direct contact of their body fluids with those of someone with the virus. A person with HIV is said to be HIV positive. So HIV can be caused through sexual contact, through blood contact, through breastfeeding. And to control this, which is they are the same slides, we can limit the number of sexual partners an individual have. Don't have unprotected sex. Always make sure to use condoms. Get tested if unprotected sex or sex with multiple partners have occurred. Test yourself for HIV. Then raise awareness by education programs. That's all for this. That's all for this slide.